Hello traders, this is Alex with the StockMatrix program. We're going to do a review today. Quarter moon time frame that I use was on Monday, September 29th. So again, kind of important because it's one moon period past the solar for me. This is my X account, Twitter account, kind of my standard intro. CBOTman33 is my handle. I do post trades that we might have had, um, you know, on this account, and some commodity stuff and research that I prefer, right? Um, and then let's go to the bar chart, kind of our, they give you away a free bar chart, gives you away a free portfolio. So we use that. That's where I've dumped all the trades. Now you can buy the plus, which is nice, actually. It gives you full-time quotes. And I'm not paid by these or sponsored by them or anything, but I use them. A lot of people get quotes from them, whether they realize it or not. No big change. Meta's the drag. We locked down 2 grand in that call. Tesla's up 7,500 in its call. 3 grand IBM. And some of these smaller ones are pretty decent, even though it's small. But the initial small, where it actually is trading is small. 16 grand is where you're tying up, and you made $274. So pretty good percentage there on some of even these smaller ones. There's quite a few that have no direction, right? They're sideways. Lynn, and we'll go through those. Let me hop over now to the portfolio page. This is the StockMatrix statistical page, and you can see that we had some, or we have some coming in today on Tesla, some annuals, and IBM also had one yesterday on the moon period. And you can see we have some 90-degreers, so you can kind of look through those, look at the chart, compare them, see what it did. Maybe mark it down on your calendar, review it, next Friday, and see where, what Tesla did back on these annuals. Now, both of these are highs, right? So you got to be a little cautious. Hang on just one second. It looks like Tesla's a mistake. Let me go over here to Tesla. September 30th. Yeah, that ain't right. Just has one. So anyway, it has an annular coming in, which is a high. IBM has an old low back from 1993. Again, IBM's an old company. I tried to pick older companies that have been around a while. There's only a few that are fairly new. Of course, Coinbase is one of those, and Tesla is the other. We have, we're, again, just basically one moon away. Let's now go to the trade sheet. Now, this is the stock side, not the option page. Again, we use the option page on the bar chart. This is, again, 100 shares each stock. We're still above a half a mil, 100 shares. Again, since one option controls 100 shares, I take it times 100, and that's the index of the StockMatrix program. So it's 500, again, half a mil. You can see we have 5 short-term up and 9 long-term trends up. So the short-term trend gave up a little bit of its shine. Now let me move this over here one second. Again, this is my, I don't really publish this, but this is just a quick little copy, and when I click this button, it saves it. Right, so you can see the highest it's been was back September 20th. Now I don't do this every day, just when I get on here. So, 502,000. So that was back on the 20th. So we have not made a new high, at least that I have posted or caught. So that's kind of interesting in itself. Switching over to the chart page on the StockMatrix program, again, quarter moon of time, square of 9 for price, divisions of the square of 9. And you can see, I'm going to keep the annuals up here so you can maybe stop, write them down, print them, whatever. But these will go, I'm going to try to, I think I went through and put them all to the end of the year. So in case I quit doing this or something, that you have those, right? So anyway, here is NVDA. Again, the square of 9 is kind of right in there. We kind of have a flat top. Doesn't look bearish. Doesn't look undervalued for sure. Let me gray this out. So you can see we got stopped in at the high. Has not made a new high. This is kind of support down in here against this 1-to-1 and the old highs. So right here. So you can see it's just kind of there. The annulars are listed here. Let's go to the next one, Meta. You can see it's just a chopper. Again, pretty boring, but those boring markets are put a lot of dollars in your pocket. If you're trying to do a Vegas thing, go to Vegas. Don't treat your investments as a gambling thing, right? If you're looking for excitement, go to the casino. Keep this separate. Kind of had an outside period down, closed kind of crappy. Secondary event on the solar. So a little caution to the wind here. I would definitely, if I was overloaded on Meta, I would be a little cautious here. You know, we start trading back under these old highs quite a bit. You start getting down in here, that would be really concerning. Here's Coke. Been kind of caught in a bear trend. We actually made a new low finally. Just a slow chopper. We're short and trend is down. Our stops at a break even. So no big whoop there. Here's Google. Oh, for Christ's sake, sorry. Here's Coke, if you want to print that. And here is Google. I put GL because it has more data from the history. So that's why it's not Goog. Okay, but you can see that this market has just been trending. You know, it's off the chart. No base though, right? It concerns me deeply that, you know, it should make a base out to here to have that kind of a bull up to here. So again, once it breaks, there's nothing going to stop it. These gaps are nothing. Stops way the hell down here. Oh no, actually we can bump that up now. Forgot to do it. Let me go ahead and do it now. Again, I use sets of 3, right? 1, 2, 3, and it goes under that unless it's an outside event that I use 2. One extra one would have been down here if this was an outside event. Anyway, this is the stop now, which is 232.83. So that's a big bump up. And you can see mid-August was the opening. So you can go back and look at the chart. Back in 2004, both the low and the open happened on the same day. Not much to report. You know, it's the short-term trend is now down, right? 2 boxes it takes to turn the short-term down or up. We went 2 boxes below and closed on the low of the previous moon period. So a little heavy, actually. You know, supports these old highs. Kind of loud. I mean, that's down way the hell down here. So be a little cautious trading a few of these. Let's go now to Microsoft. And you can see, had a little corrective back mode, you know, after this big whiplash. You know, it's bully too, and it corrected deeply. So, you know, you have to almost, you know, and it also closed lower this moon period than the previous one. So the trend, and it made a lower high and a lower low. So the trend is officially down. I mean, I have it up yet, but officially it's down. Again, why? Because it didn't go 2 boxes below to turn that trend back to negative. So it's still up until we knock this square out, 504.10. You know, then that'll trip that short-term trend down. Now, it doesn't apply too much to our system, but it does to what I do on the chart stuff. So, yeah. Anyway, it is what it is. Here is Amazon. You can see it just again, had a crappy interim, you know, first part of the week, closed back firm by today or by Monday. So, you know, mid-range close, which leaves the guy a little questionable. We get that, you know, this is where we got short, right in that whiplash. So stops are over the highs. So it makes sense, right? It shouldn't have done that. Amazon should have made a new high right in here. It should have powered up and popped highs out. So this is concerning. I mentioned it the whole time. Be careful. I thought for sure this negative action was probably going to be the consequence. Let's go now to Apple. Yeah, just there, right? The stops are underneath this low. You know, it did not make a new high yet, but it's a little aggressive actually. The trend, you know, we're long from down in here, so our stop is profitable, you know, unless it gaps through us. I assume that all things equal, and we have a higher solar eclipse close than the previous solar eclipse, right? So the biannual, again, the eclipses divide the year in a half. Anyway, the biannual chart is up, so from close to close. So again, that tells you, or at least me, to buy the dips on Apple. Here's Tesla, kind of just there, just kind of, again, it appears that Tesla's, you know, we were down fast, kind of up and then sideways. Here's our triangle, right? However you want to call it, an ascending triangle, whatever it is. You can see we're getting fast in here. We had higher closes. We closed higher than the previous solar. So, you know, again, the biannular, the solar versus the previous solar is also right in there. So to me, this is something that's not bearish by any stretch of the imagination. Uh-oh, here we go. There's Tesla. You can stop and print. And here's Lynn. That'll be the next one. But anyway, you can see Tesla's right in the hunt. You know, ever since we broke this Gans Cardinal Cross area, it's been friendly on faster pace action. So Tesla to me is undervalued. It's trading undervalued. It's not trading overvalued by any stretch of the imagination. Here's Lynn. Again, one of those that should have made a new high. This will be new highs if it gets up here. Be careful, right? I mean, if you're just bullish. I mean, it's been a half a year and we haven't made a new high yet. Over half, almost a year, it hasn't made a new high. So it's a true chopper. Usually we'll lose money in those choppers. Any long-term trend following system will lose money in that. Here's ED. Kind of had a, now Edison is kind of the counter trend, right? Back in April when NVDA and Microsoft and, you know, they were all making lows. Well, Edison was, you know, it went up into that while everything else went down. So again, the professional money was pushing it into Edison and probably other companies like that, right? So they dumped it once the lows occurred on those bigger stocks. Edison then, you know, has been a high and down ever since. Now we did go long right here on near the close level, which tells me to be a little careful on the other stocks, right? Because this has been the opposite. I didn't have to follow it, but it makes sense a little bit. We squared out the range right in here as well, right? Which that's why this blue line here is a 1-to-1 of the moon periods. So 1 moon over for a square 9 up, and we squared out this range, right? The Gann square of the range right in here. So this low was a good timing. It was also the solar. So this low has pretty good bones behind it. So again, use a little caution on, well, on its own merits, right? Forget the spreading of the market. This looks like a low, possibly. Again, if it makes a new low, you got to get out. Here's Adobe. Again, potential bottom, right? Double bottom confirmed. So it's interesting to me. We haven't made a new low. And it's been a while, right? I mean, April. So you're going to be, talking a 6-month range here pretty soon. You can see we're above the trend line, but not flying away. So it makes me a little cautious of loading up the ship. If you are going to assume that this is a low, use options only. You need to go out probably at least 3 months. And then if you got the money right, then you can exercise those options. But just in case these markets have been gapping weirdly, almost illegally, in my opinion. So right now we don't know if this is a high on the solar or if this whole area is a low. So you don't know. So use options only until proven otherwise. Here's IBM. Again, one that started out, this is the one that gapped first criminally. Right, here we are back above it. So what the hell? What, these professionals don't have a fucking clue? I mean, come on. Their AI is stupid. Don't buy their AI. They fucking can't even project their own stock price right. Just pisses me off. It doesn't make any sense why we're back into this range and actually above it. So it's a crooked deal. That just tells you to follow the trend always, right? Don't assume anything. We got long down in here, even though I didn't fucking like IBM for doing that shit. 10% gap down, really? What the? During the week? No report, I don't think. I don't know. Anyway, that's been my bitch because it just pisses me off. And then people think, oh, these AI are so smart. No, they're just programmed. Actually, they can program it to kind of tell you whatever you want to think you want to know. They're not truthful. They're liars. The AI has no clue about what it's fucking doing. It just, whoever programmed it, right? So, if whoever programmed it is a Nazi frickin' criminal, guess what? It's going to fucking preach that Nazis are great and criminals are okay. I mean, if it's a religious zealot, it's going to preach religious stuff, right? I mean, and it's going to, every time you pull something up, it's going to lean it towards that. Again, if you're talking markets and AI, it's going to present it to whoever wrote the AI. If they're perpetual bear, if they're perpetual bull. So you're going to get weird shit like this. I'm afraid it's just beginning. It's proving that terribly. Okay, here's Bank of Magellan. Again, kind of really a good bull trend. I mean, it's not trading overvalued. To me, it's still trading undervalued. That's pretty impressive. Since beginning of the year, which was right here, right? This is December. Yeah, it was at 77 something. We'll call it 78. Now it's at 104. I mean, I know it's not like Meta, but this is just a bank stock. That's pretty good, actually. And there's no gaps. So I kind of like, again, well, you can't really talk about it too much because there's nothing to say. Stocks got moved up. Here's Procter & Gamble. A lot of negative news. Some of their products are getting bashed for food dyes and whatever else they're trying to poison people with. But that's just one product, one or two products. They got so many. Again, back a year ago, we're a little lower than a year ago, so the trend is down, right, annually. And then, from solar to solar, we're down. So again, Procter & Gamble's down. I don't know anything about the dividend. I bet it's got to be pretty good. Hopefully it's pretty good, because again, it doesn't move that much. You can see we got a lot of annuals at the end of the year, so be good. I like annuals. When there's a lot of them, you got stuff to trade, right? When there's no annuals, the market tends to, and I'll show you on the daily charts, tends to just move in one direction, typically. All right, here's JPM, the diamond. We closed right where the previous close, but we did make a higher high and a higher low. So the trend is definitely, up. Yeah, I don't know. Now you can see my stop is still down here because this outside event, right? This moon period is an outside. So I always give it one extra click. 'Cause to me, these outside events. Now this one confirmed some type of low. Normally you don't know, right? So I'm gonna always assume sideways, just like this one did. Right, here's an outside event, inside, 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 and then it finally started making a. So now this one happened to go higher, but I still keep my stops a little sacred. Don't want to get stopped out on a little jimmy jam. Here's Coinbase, again, little negatory. Again, I would have preferred not to trade Coinbase and actually traded Bitcoin options, but you got to open up separate accounts. It's just a freaking mess. I want to keep everything that you can trade on Robinhood or whatever system you trade, right? These are all options on that system. You don't have to open separate accounts, transfer money complicatedly. So Coinbase kind of follows Bitcoin, not exact, but good enough for the option measure. And you can see it's just, it's a fairly new company, so we don't have as many. Now we'll go look back in time. If this doesn't make a new high, we'll put that July 24th, whatever, maybe it was equal to this one, right? This was last year's. So we have another potential high in there. You can see we've had 4 highs. We're going to add one here, right? This one was something in July 50th or 20th or something. So again, it's going to be another one at 441, right? So now we don't know that. Maybe it'll tomorrow start pushing higher. But we're into this gap again because our AI does not work. Whoever bought that AI should fire it and get a new one. Cintas, the fire extinguisher and washing clothes company. My sister used to work for them, but stories I could tell. Stops are down here. We have a huge outside period, kind of, and I was talking about this to be careful of this kind of thing. Now this outside event to me is sideways, right? So it can go either direction. We're into the, not just one, not just two, but 3 eclipses now are in this vicinity, right? Here's the one back here, and then there's the last one, and there's this or the previous one, and this was the last one. So I got one too high. So this is the 3 solar eclipses. So that's a year and a half worth of data. Pretty important, right? We closed right on the previous one. So I don't know what to make of that. I think, if you're buying a dip, and you're looking for some type of confirmation, if we can follow through, that would be the confirmation I need to probably start power buying it. Again, it's a BlackRock protected company, hence the new highs here. It's an old company, one of the older ones actually. So we have a lot of annulars, right? But a lot of the annulars occur after the middle of the year. So over half come in. A lot in December, right? You can see there's a void here. See if I can find it. It's in the first of the year. I just want to mention this because it always drives me insane. We have our first annular of the year is on the February 17th, and our last annular is December 30th. So there's a month, 2 months and a half of no annulars in basically all of January and half of February. Wow. So that's always interesting on Cintas. For an old company that's been around forever, you don't make, so if you ever make a high or low and you think it's a big one, don't in January, because the odds are that it's not, right? Or low, high, whatever. All right, let me set up the dailies. Well, here's NVDA, kind of squished the chart down on the daily. The 13th was a major low, and the cycle of this low, secondary low, let me see which cycle are we on. The 12th cycle of it. Now, I won't get into the reasons why. You just go back and do the cycles of this time count, whether it's calendar days, whether it's market days, whether it's weekly. Anyway, you run that out in the future and you'll find that it hits a lot of these. So anyway, that's what that black line is. Again, the low is on the 13th, which is a circle down here. And you can see we're just kind of caught in the crosshairs, right? So no big whoop. A lot of stuff. NVIDIA's been around a long time. I mean, back when I built my computer, I always build my own computers. I got 4 screens I'm looking at. It cost me like $1,200-1,300 for NVIDIA's 4-screen video card. For Christ's sakes, that's been 3-4 years ago. So, at least it makes sense why NVIDIA's up here, right? They got a good product. They're not an advertising company, for crying out loud. Here's Coke again. Coke flops around between sugar and corn syrup, right? The original classic Coke, and they have other sodas out there, and they got other waters now and some other stuff, but still they're kind of a one-hit wonder, right? So if the cycle of pop goes up or down, they bring back classic Coke, and the market tends to go up. And then when because why? Because corn sweeteners got too high. Now corn's on its low, so I'm assuming you're going to see corn sweeteners, and sugar's down too, though. Well, hang on, let me just pull up both those. Okay, I brought up the corn and the sugar. These are the 2 battles that go on for Coke. Whether they switch to Coke Classic or they call it different names now, but either the corn sweetener one or the regular sugar. You can see back in 2020, both were decently cheap. So I'm sure they had both, right? Now you can see that when we got up to here, I'm sure this is again the corn, this is the sugar. I'm sure when we got up to here, they switched to corn sweeteners again, right? And then definitely corn sweeteners were out and sugar was back in, right? And then as you dropped, now I'm sure everything's going to go back to corn sweeteners until this spread, right? The difference between sugar and corn come back in line. You can see it follows, right? They're both kind of agricultural products. But it's kind of important, right, for Coke. That's their main ingredient, sweetener, besides water. So pretty interesting, right? I haven't looked at the comparison side by side in a while. So, of course, commodities are my old roots. You know, both of these are pretty ugly down in here. Both kind of had a bull, but the bigger bull was the corn. All right, let me get this, clear this off. So anyway, Coke's in here. We do have a bunch of annuals. Old company, obviously. Not much to report. Now, again, these are nice areas. If you're wanting to be a bull and you buy only, be an area where I'd be thinking about it, not just buy just because it looks cheap, right?
Refresh finished.
Oh, Christ's sakes. Hang on. I still got commodities up. That's orange juice, by the way. Well, that's been a flyer. Freaking A, all-time highs. 580, poof. I mean, this is a spot chart. It's a little gappy, but oh my gosh, what a wild ride. I mean, prior to, you know, this is all new highs here, right? So the bull made new highs by 5-fold. So again, never assume, oh, it's too high. It can't stay that high. Well, it goes up 5 more times. All right, let me get back to the right sheet here. What are we on? Coke. Okay. Oh, that's Google. Yeah, that's the next one. All right, here's Google. Again, the Solar Eclipse was the high, so a little caution there. We had a pretty good morning Monday, and then it petered out, closed like crap. Let me see. We're at 802. I guess the market isn't open, but the S&P is down a little bit. Not much. Pretty steady. So unknown what the direction is based on the futures. Yeah, it's 8 o'clock on September 30th. So we got the end of the month stuff too, which again, a lot of your funds get paid by the end of the month, end of the quarter. Could be the end of the quarter as well, right? So they that's how they get paid. So you always got to be knowing that, right? Knowing that they get out of losers and or winners, right, to get paid. Because when they don't get, until they get out, they don't get paid. A lot of them. Anyway, that's here and there. Support's down here. So near this gap, I would assume it's pretty easy to go down there, actually. We've got a few annulars coming up. All right, let's move on. Here's Microsoft. Again, we are 44 days over. On October 2nd will be the matrix zone. You can see this low was the lunar and the 7th, right? Again, we talked about how important the 7ths are because of this low on April 7th was massive, right? The bear market turned into a bull on one day or two on Microsoft, and it went up ever since. Never traded like it was overvalued ever until here, this gap, and then that was it. What, 12% gap up during the week? Come on. Anyway, the solar eclipse is right in here, so obviously that's resistance. So you got to assume it. You know, we could challenge that pretty easy. Maybe even take out these highs, right? That's not that significant, but it's the close, right? That'll be key. Here's Amazon again. The solar eclipse is kind of up in this zone. Got a high day, really. You know, it's one of the. I always go when I do chart work and I do Gann squares of range and price. And I would take this high right here. So it's the furthest one to the right. I always take the furthest one to the right. So that's the solar eclipse day was right there. Now it happened to be on the weekend, so it's a little tricky. It's always nicer when the solar eclipse and lunar eclipse are on a Tuesday or Wednesday. Here's Apple again. Solar eclipse here was a gap up. That's friendly, right? Again, not undervalued. A lot of people think, oh, no, it's, you know, but when you get the gap right the next day and it doesn't challenge and close it within the first moon period, that tells me it's pretty strong and probably undervalued, right? I always kind of look at stocks as either how it's trading. If it's trading overvalued or undervalued. To me, this is not trading overvalued, right? It's smaller ranges, not crazy. And you can see here, it got crazier and snot. This one was actually the 8th, so a little different than the rest of them. Is one day later. So on all Apple's a big one, right? Everybody has Apple in their portfolio, even if they trade or not trade. Insurance companies do, right? The big outfits that control your retirement funds have Apple in there. Tesla, again, not trading overvalued by any stretch. It's making high in the range. I got to assume we're going to. Here's Lynn, just a chipper chopper. Let me see what this thing is. That's a 1. Well, it's both. It's a 1/2 and also a fraction of the slope. So anyway, important, right? You can see that we're kind of holding it. So again, it's got a pump in new highs. I would assume though, looking at this chart, you know, let's look at it weekly. Yeah, that this chart feels bearish because it hasn't made a new high. But if we'd ever make a new high, I think we're kind of into this mode, right? Where it, you know, still chops, but we're in this grind. And there's not enough data to go back and prove a bull, right? Which I don't like these kind of markets as much because you can't go back and see what it did. But this was a long, drawn out sideways chop, and then it just started grinding higher. So that's kind of, we've went into our pause mode. I believe Lynn is a hydrogen play. No, I don't take my word on that. I was kind of looking for about the only energy play I got, right? I don't put crude or nothing on there. Trying to stay away from my roots. Anyway, let's move on. ED. Edison Electric Company, again, a counter cyclical of the big boys trade, right? You know, made a high when all the other ones are making lows. Now we've made a low here, so be cautious on the S&P, basically the Dow, And this index charts might help you a little bit, because it's hard to get individuals like the NVDA. So you get these individually, right? As an index, this is opposite of the Dow. It's opposite of the Nasdaq, opposite of the QQQ. So be a little cautious here, looking at being too much of a bull at these levels on the main stocks. Here's Adobe, old company. It needs to get going, right? I'm kind of friendly this bottom, and you got to assume that this low, if it takes it out, if you happen to buy it, if you're picking, uh, let somebody else be a hero. You get out, wait, see what it does. Now, if you got a bunch of shares on, maybe the dividend's good, right? You might want to, since it can get going, it might be worthy of buying the put and holding on to the shares and collect your dividend. Now, you can see this from this high, 77 market days over is kind of key. And it was this low, so pretty important pivot. And the cycle of that also proved out in the past as well. Here's IBM. That's just stupid ass gap trade. I should just delete it from my system. I can't shake that. Fuckers. Anyway, here is the Solar Eclipse support. So if we drop down, you're wanting to buy a dip. If you buy only mode. Now, if you're a seller only, this might be a candidate to be a seller. It's up, fill the gap, cover the uncovered close. We're 66 market days over from the high. Now, again, looking at the cycle of that to see if it matches out. No, nothing really. That was a low, but let's go back and look at when it matched up with the previous low. Yeah, this one close enough. You can see that. Well, let me just go to that one far left low. Close enough. It kind of worked, right? Excuse me. That was 42 days over. 44 is the matrix, so kind of gave you an idea that this one is important, right? And it was low, and then 55 was kind of just in the middle. It was kind of this little low, a little less. It was 1 day off or 2 days off from that big moment, so pretty important there. But the 66 that we're on really has nothing. Well, it was this low, I guess. We're not. So anyway, again, that's why when you see those, why I have them there, because I use them to, we went up, we went down, kind of equally. It's obvious to me when I'm looking at it that this whole cycle, this whole run is important mathematically. Okay, here's Bank of Magellan. Again, we're void of any annuals, and I kind of posted here 56 days of no annuals. You can see we just trend up. We're up against the. I believe that's a 1-to-1. No, it's not. It's a mathematical of the slope. It's a 1/2 of the slope. So important to me. Again, basically it's a fraction squaring out of the low, right? The actual low, which was 70.46. So, anyway, that's a GAN thing, squaring out of the range, right? They're squaring out of an actual price. Basically, that's divided by 2 because anyway, that's what this line is. It's pretty important, right? You can see that it offered definitely some support. Let me add the actual. I'm going to do it off close so I don't mess up the other one. Let's go an actual 1/1. Yeah, that's going to be too fast. There's a 1/1. It definitely projected the speed of the first rally, which is kind of interesting. Right, this is a 1/1. So 1 day over, market day, or bar, for $1 up. They projected that speed pretty well. So a 2/1 of the actual. Yeah, I'm getting off track. Let me delete that. All right, let's move on. Procter & Gamble, you can see it's just a kind of in the bottom zone. If you're bullish and wanting to buy a dip, we kind of have. I like threes, right? There is 3 lows here, so would be an easy buy probably. If it makes a new low and closes below it, I would assume you're wrong. But again, there's definitely a pattern of 3. This is your pivot, though, if you want to wait. So if we get a new high here, get up to 162, and you're going to wait patiently to be a buyer, 162 on the stop makes sense to me as well. Here's JPM, the diamond. A lot of annulars coming in. Solar Eclipse is right up in the hunt. It looks a little toppy. We're not trading overvalued. Well, maybe a little. This action here on the solar. Again, you can see I haven't decided if it's a high yet or a low yet, right? I'm undecided. That's why everything's on both sides. Because if we drop down, it looks like a high to me. We've only had 1 close above the solar, right? So well, 2. So nothing yet to get all wound up. Now here's Coinbase. You can see we're inside the triangle. Here was the dead smack middle of this slope triangle. And you can see that the data works here pretty good on Coinbase. So somebody's trading that out there that's bigger than me. Again, I'm a little puddle. I'm a little fish in the big puddle. Yeah, it is what it is. Caught in a coil. We don't know if it's going to break out yet. Here's Cintas. Again, this action that we had on this hammer day is what you got to be cautious of when you're picking, right? You know, pick, 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 boom. Then it closes back up there anyway, and now we're above it, right? So these are the, I guess, on a bear market, right? You're looking, especially if you're a buyer only, and you're looking for those signs. Well, when this dropped out that day, I don't know what made it go down. To be honest with you, I don't really care, but those are the kind of days you're looking for. I imagine it was high volume. It was early off, right? Must have been a report or something, quarterly report, to buy on, right? If you're going to be a buyer only, you buy those pounder days where it's cleaning everybody out that picked it too soon, or at least buy calls that day, right? Early if you caught it in time. If your alerts went off in your phone, oh, something's happened to Cintas. It opened way down here, right? It opened to new lows. If you had an alert on, well, you know, by the time you looked it up, it was already here. Let me just see how fast that was. Let's go to a 60-minute. Yeah, it was pretty quick. 8:30. Yeah, and an hour later, you're already back up to here. So let me see if I can break that down even faster. I'm just curious. No big deal. Let's go to a 4-minute chart. I like 4 minutes because 4 degrees is a rotation. If you believe in the rotations of the Earth, which I do not, but a lot of people do. Here is 4 minutes. Each one of these bars are 4 minutes. News came out 7:30. It must have been a pre-trade. So that occurred before the opening. It occurred on the pre-trade. All this traded pre-trade. Now there's the official opening at 8:30. This was pre-trade, futures if you want to call it that. So the lowest, 4, 1, 2, 3. You only had the best you could have done is probably bought it in here at the best. More than likely you would have been up here. So yeah, it was fast, and that's kind of what you want to see. You'd assume that somebody got hosed, right? Maybe it's time for me to step in, especially if you're waiting patiently for some type of notice deal. It closed here, so you could have waited till it closed, see how it all fared out. System, we got, we haven't got stopped in yet, right? We're still short, so there's an outside period on the StockMatrix program. Okay, I'm done. Thank you, everyone. Everybody have a good rest of your week. Again, the solars are now trading on Monday. Let me see when the next one is. Oh, get out of there. Yeah, so October 7th is our next one, which is a Tuesday. So yeah, we're definitely in the middle of the week now. So it's a little, while in here it was basically a weekly chart, right? But now we're into a different zone. It's gaining time. October 13th is a Monday. So definitely we're into the newer periods. October 21st is a Tuesday. So again, basically now we're into the middle of the week. So the charts definitely will look different. Okay, signing off. Everyone have a great rest of your week.